Rico, are you here?
In case everyone's ready, and if you're waiting for me, I'm happy to do the countdown if you want. And everyone does look ready, so let's have a go in 3, 2, 1. Good luck, have fun. And hello from me as well. While we move everyone out of the channel, and gonna handle a little bit of last tech stuff before the race. Let me say hello to all the viewers. Welcome to Blowout 2024, as Eli already said. And this is going to be an exciting race because even we as the commentators, as Eli said, there is a gambit system and players do not know of each other's gambits, and we actually have no idea either. So yeah, we're going to be watching this just like you as the viewers are, and going to be making, well, you know, guesses as to what everyone is doing.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this event's going to go, because this is one of the few times that, one, the commentary team doesn't really know what's going on as far as what the individual racers are doing, and two, we don't know exactly what their gambits are going to be, so we don't know what each player's one single side goal is going to be. Because the jelly kill matters as much as it does in terms of the point structure, and also getting deeper into the cave matters as much as it does, we're going to see our runners, at the very least, prioritizing a jelly kill. So they're going to be doing the usual stuff, opening a ton of chests, getting some backup EXP, opening a bunch, especially in these early floors, to maybe score a particularly useful item like a elemental ring or a free rock that boosts agility or something. It's just about mid to end cave that we're really going to see the point variance as far as the individual racers go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one point, of course, that we should mention is that this is going off of the de-randomizer mod. I am seeing in chat that Mike might have our floors than everyone else. I only saw a couple of, I think, identical floors, but I did not check every single runner. Perhaps this is something that should be addressed. But that being said, de-randomizing the race or the floors means that basically every runner has the same floor, or is supposed to have the same floor. Every runner will have the same chests on their floor, aka the same items in their chests, the same enemies on those floors. However, what those enemies do in combat, that is still random. So, I don't know, on the bottom right now, you see 2 horses, 1 eagle. 1 horse, 1 eagle now. Every player, if they get into encounter, will have 2 horses and 1 eagle. But you know, especially for cores later on, which, as you may or may not know, they give a lot of experience, but they have a 75% escape chance. Whether they escape or not will be different for every runner. So yeah.
So the cores matter a lot, and there's 4 different sets of cores that really do matter in helping a player get ready for their race. The red cores early on, from 9 to 11, are a great kickstart. You can defeat pretty much every enemy until cores, but once you actually get the cores themselves, you see that the EXP that you get for defeating almost every enemy before level 9 equals out to roughly 1, if you're lucky, 2 cores as you go. That's an interesting situation we got with Mike.
Yep, I messaged the people in the black suits, so hopefully that's gonna be solved.
I'm also updating the score sheet in the middle of the screen, so give me just a moment while I get that fixed.
And the rules command apparently does not quite yet work.
Always a little bit of a tech issue.
It happens. This is very early on a US time zone. In order to, you know, accommodate runners from all around the world. And we do actually have people from at least 3 different time zones here. So, yeah. This is a sacrifice that has some of the technical crew behind this event. Woken up quite early before the event. It is what happens. Right, so maybe for the completely uninitiated, let me really quick talk about what the Engine Cave is. You're looking at basically a roguelike. You have 99, well, normally randomly generated floors. Now with the D-Rando, they're all gonna be identical. And you don't know which items you will get, but you know which items you can get in theory on the specific floors. The same is true for enemies. And yeah, basically your goal is to somehow survive, to also go fast, and to make it all the way to floor 99, which is where the boss is. I know I said 100 floors, but you know, bear with me, it's 99. And yeah, that boss would be the jelly, and that jelly is what everyone wants, what everyone wants to kill in this tournament, because that is gonna give you, combined with the floors, a minimum of 100 points that you're gonna have in this race. Every other race, every other point incentive is gonna be on top, and yeah. Berserk Blade is not a point incentive, as far as I know. Nope.
Thank goodness.
So yeah, we talked about this slightly, or right before the commentary started. We, as the commentary, will have to do some guessing work as well, but yeah. Our wits are at an end as well if it comes to why Mike might have equipped the Berserk Blade. It is an item you generally do not want to equip, so I can only assume it was by mistake. Yeah, of course, also if you guys have any questions, post in the chat. As you can see, we do read it. And once we're, or for the most part, Eli is going to be done with the tech setup, we can fully focus on what's going to happen with the game here. Yep, there is a strongest equip option that, of course, will save you a lot of manuing time. But with a Berserk Blade, that runs into the risk of accidentally equipping it. It shouldn't happen. Normally it doesn't happen. When it does happen, you just hope it's not going to be in a failable tournament. And it does look like Mike is going to be back to floor 1, which indicates that he is on the de-randomized seat. I'm going to check that because I do remember what floor 2 looks like. I do not remember what floor 1 looks like. Yep. That cost him 8 minutes, or maybe it didn't cost him 8 minutes, depending on how the judge committee is gonna run it. Yep. We'll see. That's Kaliaris, who I believe is the first player at Course, or at least the first player I've seen at Course. So Red Course are definitely an enemy you're gonna be looking for. You're going to be really happy to see it in your seed at this point. You know, you never know what the organizers give you. And I don't know, Eli, if you have any idea about how the rando seeds look, but I personally do not.
Oh, no, I was not given any information either. Our generous event coordinators, Kriegspire and Shadow Killer, who typically run Fatal Blowouts, at least have in the past. This year, as they did, what was it, 2 years ago, were putting in hard work to make sure that the seeds were both beatable and fun for the audiences, the viewers, or us as commentary. So from what I understand, every run should be able to feature a successful kill. There shouldn't be any ridiculous, overcomplicated missions or objectives or tasks or enemy compositions or floor layouts or anything that players will have to be forced to go through in order to complete a kill. As long as they've done the usual stuff in terms of earning some basic EXP, opening what they can to get their survival, and whatnot. The big thing that I'm most curious about is how many miracles are going to be featured in each seed, because while they can be farmed from a couple of specific enemies, those drop rates are 3% or lower, and therefore they're going to probably be collecting miracles from whatever chests that they can find them in.
Or enemies, maybe. We'll see. We have not seen a rule set with miracles being points incentives, so yeah. Whether that is going to be a strat or not, we will see. I think the Durando definitely makes a difference there. Because the thing is, while everyone does have the same floors, obviously not everyone is going to open the same items. As in, the same items will be on that floor, but that doesn't mean that every player opens that specific chest, is what I mean. So the problem is always, are you going to open on specific floors? You know, are you going to miss something if you don't explore that floor? Do not open that chest. And you never know what is in the seed, you know, whether you need to open heavily, whether you need to open that Deca Blade on floor 15, or otherwise, I'm not sure if there's Deca Blade on floor 15, you know, I'm just making an example. If you miss that and you need it to get a jelly kill because it's otherwise a very rough seed, then yeah, that would be a problem. Yeah, I believe, as Eli said, that the seeds were vetted in a way that an interaction like that is not gonna happen, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe some of these runners are gonna be challenged.
Is there anything the runners should look out for? I'm sorry, the audience members should look out for with the seed. From my understanding, the seed generator omits all Iris items and the Providence, but I don't think there's anything else that's omitted.
Yeah, so there, to make the de-randomizer work, there's a couple of technical adjustments. As you said, Providence and Iris items were taken out. Then you can find spells multiple times. And then there is also, so those are the definite things you can see. You know, you can find strong, I don't know, 3 times throughout the course of the run. The other thing being that floors kind of sort of do or can repeat in their, you know, general layout, chest position, stairs position, and so on and so forth. So you might see, say, a particular healing tile or stairs formation that you've seen before on the previous floor. Not to the extent that you could really abuse it as a runner, I don't think, but, or at least there has been enough research done. I don't think anyone has access to that information, and if so, I would probably know. But, yep. Those are all the differences to the Durando. Otherwise, you're looking at a complete, randomly generated cave, as the game could normally generate it.
I like the Snow Sword that we just saw Eve pick up. Anybody who brought the either Tia or Salon in order to earn that point for having a lady at the Jelly Battle will be happy for that, because Snow Sword, enough Fry Sword as well. Snow Sword's great for the girls because it gives plus 50 defense, which can really help with their bulk early on, since their HP is so low at the start. And Fry Sword is great because it's an incredibly strong holy weapon that, well, only Decker and Guy can use. They are so powerful that it allows them to very effectively just destroy whatever it is they hit if it's susceptible to holy damage. Not necessarily enemies like Archfiends that have well over 1,000 HP, but for a little more threatening enemies like leeches later on, or some of the chariot enemies that we'll be bumping into, or the many other vampire or other undead type enemies, it's going to be nice to see that Fry Sword get some use, and that is a great thing that we hope all of our runners get. Fortunately, most of these chests are going to be easy to access, or at least we hope so. So most of our runners should have relatively similar inventory compositions, and therefore we should see, outside of maybe some clever feeding and maybe some late game chests, a lot of the same early and mid cave stuff across everybody's inventories, and of course maybe some enemy drops.
Yep. And another thing that's very different is how fast runners are going here. We can see that Caleres is well ahead of everyone in terms of floors, at the very least. And this, yeah, definitely has to do with the gambit system, or could have to do with the gambit system, I would say. yeah, there are incentives to be the first person on floor 21, 15, 99, or be the first to kill the jelly, or so on and so forth. Generally speaking, you do have 2 hours for this tournament, so I would say going into this with a mindset of using those 2 hours to get as many points as possible would be an idea, to approach it. Whether it's the best idea is, well, we still have to find out this year's rule set. But yeah, generally speaking, unless you're going for some of these speed-based incentives, I would say there is not necessarily too much incentive to go fast in these tournaments, as opposed to in regular speedruns.
Speaking of going fast, the rules write it in such a way that if you're able to complete your run within 1 hour and 30 minutes, you're effectively going as fast as you need to in order to maximize the points that you're earning outside of tiebreakers or maintaining gambits. So a comfortable 90 minutes for the majority of our racers in this event should be feasible. You'll see a lot of our runners here scoring times in under 2 hours pretty comfortably. Sub-hour, 30 minutes, or even sub-hour for many of our competitors. We've seen Traffic Talks, who currently holds the 3rd place time, have a time in under 50 minutes. That's 5-0. So we know that it's effectively pretty consistent in terms of being able to get a sub 2 hour run for sure. So that sub 90 is going to be pretty effective. The only thing that's going to matter again is the gambit points. So because runners don't know who's picked what as far as other gambits, people are going to be in a little bit of a rush to do things like feed up their capsule monster in a hurry or reach a particular floor at a particular pace.
Yep, and because it's been asked in chat right now as well, the runners do not know which gambits have been chosen. We as the viewers do not know, and well, you as the viewers do not know, and we as commentary do not know either. So only scorekeepers and the runners themselves know about their own gambits that have been chosen. Yep, I've seen runners find Strong and Valor so far. So not only are there a couple of very capable loot chests in there, but also healing and revive spells. So, yep.
We're also seeing fruits, like Mike just picked up a magic fruit. We've seen miracles here and there. So we know that there's a variety of points scattered everywhere, as well as the big progression items and spells that our runners definitely want to see. Absorb is going to be particularly useful because, especially for players relying on Artie and another caster like Tia or Salon for a late cave, the additional MP that you're able to suck up with Absorb means that you're not going to have to rely quite as much on using miracles outside of maybe some emergency revival. So hopefully we'll be able to see all of our runners who picked up Absorb be able to utilize that and just get a lot of value out of that. And while Miracle hoarding is only worth 1 point each, if our runners do collect 10 miracles over the course of a run, which isn't an unreasonable amount of miracles, that could be the amount of points that makes or breaks a tiebreaker, since everyone scoring a jelly kill earns roughly the same amount of points of about 100. So it's those other side points that matter, and most of those are pretty small, but they'll add up pretty quickly if our runners are able to earn them consistently.
Yep, and again, because stuff like miracles do give points, it's important to say that the randomizer has all the same items for everyone. So, yeah, just because you swim in a lot of miracles doesn't give you any advantage necessarily, because anyone else could have the same amount, and then you equal out with them. So you have to find some ways to get ahead in points over everyone else. Colliers has just reached a treasure room. They spawned upright in that treasure room, which has a boom turbine in it. Very interesting. Obviously, we can use Colliers' feed now for a bit of a preview to see what everyone else is maybe going to go for. Also, we see Eve feeding a capsule monster, which could be a clue that she took the capsule second form incentive, or maybe third.
Yep, so being able to feed up your capsule monster to form 2 is pretty powerful in terms of an early point incentive, because you don't need a whole lot to do that. A couple of Berserk Blades that runners tend to get early on means that runners are usually in the market to try to get rid of them quickly, and other gear maybe a blue chest item that nobody can use, you can always feed them quickly, in the sense of being able to just have a very quick feed up. So you have the Snow Sword, you have the Sizzle Sword, you have the Fry Sword. Those are commodities that aren't very likely to be fed. But maybe you have Decker in your team and you've scored 2 Mega Axes or something where you don't have Guy on your team to be able to use the others. You may be opting to feed one of those blue chest items to your Form 1 pet, and that's a pretty hefty chunk that you're feeding up to. So Eve scores Form 2 on her Flash, and that could be the first feeding objective of the run.
Could be. Yeah, something about the Snow Sword that you mentioned. I believe Eve is the only runner in the race who has a non-star party, therefore got the 5 points for unique party composition, and she can also use, or Tia can also use the Snow Sword. Whereas everyone else, I believe, brought the star party, or brought, I'm not sure. I think everyone else brought the star party, which means that they will not be able to equip the Snow Sword, and in which case it makes very good feeding material for the capsule, either now or later.
Yep, the blue chest items, Snow Sword, Mirac Plate, Boom Turbine, pretty much every blue chest item has a very high value, and because feeding is determined for its this points towards whatever a capsule's hunger gauge is entirely based on gold value of a particular piece of whatever it is that you're feeding, armor, weapon, whatever. The gold value is very important, so we're going to be seeing those blue chests typically saved for late game, unless they're being rushed for some early feeding objectives like the Form 2 or the Form 3.
Yep. And we now see Colliera's feeding Sully to 2, so I wonder, it's perfectly possible that both those runners have the gambit to be the first to get the Form 2 of their capsule. And that would mean that Colliera's just missed the mark on that one. Question in chat, who's counting the points? Currently, there's Creekspire and Rocket Pants in the score channel, so at least those two. Who else may or not be involved? I could not say.
Real Critical and I are simply looking at the scorecard, the same as you are. The one that's on the Twitch stream is what we get to see. So, in terms of knowing who's selected what, in terms of an objective or the Gambit system, which is the only real variance that any runner can have, we are just in the dark as you.
Yep. And there is a particularly evil thing about that treasure room. So Eve is trying to make her way to that blue chest, I believe. And the thing is, in the D-Rando, you can't, in the right mind, skip those blue chests, really, So either you're going to take a very, very long time to get there, well, comparatively, or you're going to skip that item that everyone else is probably going to have. And at the end of the day, you do have 2 hours to work with. So, yep. I think it's a well-invested time to get it. Of course, you see there's just the Boom Turbine, which is not the most impressive item you could hope for from that. Oh, I like the Deflect is there for various reasons. Always a good item to find in the D-Rando. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, but it has no use for the runners. Beyond that, it's just a meme.
Speaking of mean, we're seeing the cave be a little bit mean with our runners in terms of these party rooms. We're seeing a handful of cores on Carlearis' screen, and he's earning a blue core right now as I speak. One thing that you may have remembered early on is that Mike actually started up the wrong game. So he has loaded in on the correct game, and he's already pacing pretty far for what happened. Bamboo Shadow being the only runner that's currently still in the first 20 floors means that Mike is past that. He is currently entering floor 24. With Calieris on blue cores, less than 10 floors ahead of him, considering Mike had an 8-minute deficit, that's pretty good in terms of how he managed to catch himself up.
Yep. Maybe this is a good point to talk about the runners, because starting with Mike, that's definitely the type of runner that likes to go very fast, maybe too fast for his own good sometimes, He's definitely a dasher, He does not care whether he's in a tournament scenario or not. I've never really seen him play safe, you know? So I'm not surprised that if he already lost 8 minutes.
Interesting flame fruit
kicking
for
out the
Eve.
gas.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, that's cool. Waiting to see floor 98 Dragon Con. Yeah, then of course Bamboo, who might be suspecting that the vetted seeds contain something very valuable for the first 20 floors here. Yeah, also a very seasoned runner, has grown a lot over the years, you know. His Maxim naming choices probably aren't the best, but otherwise, it's definitely a strong contender here. Eve, obviously, one of the, I would say,
Excellent
people
Cancer
who
Rock
know
for Eve.
most about movement in the cave. Yeah, it's nice. The equips are coming together for all of them. You know, slowly.
Well, the Cancer Rock is both a point objective that matters towards having the Cancer Rock, and also because the objective is, or I'm sorry, there's a side objective for having equipped characters with all of their slots filled. The Cancer Rock is just one additional thing that she won't have to look for later to fill a character's inventory up with.
Yeah, and I believe she just got that. I believe.
Yeah, she found it off of a Cancer, the crab drop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always good, you know, because that is something that not everyone is gonna have, because you probably cannot find it in a chest. So, just to finish my roundup of all the runners, there's also Kaliaris, who kind of got introduced, I think, as Travicox's partner in crime for Jelly Jam, as far as I remember anyway. But yeah, has since participated in fail blowouts by himself, or even before that, you know, excuse me if I'm misremembering. And yep, we can definitely hope for a good race here, I think. All very capable runners, all with their very own strong suits. And we see the third person feeding the capsule now, being Mike. So Mike, I wonder if you realize this. So, of course, being 8 minutes behind, if he took the gambit to feed this capsule monster second form, that of course would be quite unfortunate, because, you know, 8 minutes is a deficit you can probably not, you know...
That's a tough one to make up, especially for feeding.
With.
Mike is a pro at feeding, though, so if it does come to feeding and he has the goods, he can really catch up. He's one of the people I would consider to be the most qualified when it comes to capsule monster feeding.
Okay, so apparently some people have figured out what the gambit was based on the points. Interesting. So we do see them on the score sheet once they have been hit. I see. Yeah, so that's an interaction that could happen. So as it seems to be standing, Kaliaris took the Form 2 Gambit. Eve got the incentive before, but did not take the Gambit herself. Meaning she did not get the points, but she did keep Kaliaris from getting it. Yeah, which in turn means Kaliaris got the points subtracted from his points total.
Now, our runners did have the option to not select a particular objective. They could just have said, you know what, I'm not going to go for the double or negative, and I'm just going to do a straight race. So, with the risk of possibly losing points, they, well, they could give it up accordingly. That way they don't have to worry about losing anything.
Yep. And they can choose up to one gambit, basically, so they can choose more than one gambit either. Definitely interesting. I wonder, hopefully we get revealed at the end of the race by the runners what they chose.
And why. I'd love to hear that discussion. We would assume that people like Mike and Eve, who are very competent feeders, might have taken the feeding objective. Or they may not have. They may have picked something else, thinking others had gone for it. Because our runners did know in advance who they were running with, it's possible that someone looked at Mike as a competitor and said, "Oh, I'm not taking the Form 2 gamble because Mike is a pro at feeding, so I'm gonna go for something else that I think I can do quickly while he does that quickly." Of course, there was no coordination pre-run, so as far as we know, anyway. Kyler is attempting something that I hope more runners attempt in the future. He's using Absorb on a red core in order to suck a lot of MP out. Because of the way spells work on cores, if a character like Artie or Tia or so on cast Absorb on a core, they can score a ton of MP, especially from a red core, if they are a decent level up. So it's a great way to find an enemy that just gives you a ton of MP back. Also, having Artie cast Absorb and then following up with Maxim casting Droplet or Flash or something means that Artie can, for a simple 4-second or 5-second long cast, recover 70, 80, maybe 90 MP, and then Maxim still gets the kill off on all the cores to make sure that you get the EXP. If the situation happens where all the cores run away, then you don't really lose anything, but it's a great way to try to ensure that you get a little more value out of the cores that you find.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you said, it's just empty actions otherwise. And we don't usually see Absorb, but like if you have it, and if you got a lot of time to spare as well, yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Welcome to the event RC. You now exist as Bamboo Shadow's pet.
Yeah. Again, judging by his Maxim name, he does not seem to like that capsule very much, but you would be wrong, I think. Sully's a great choice. You know?
So
making a lot of assumptions there, but still.
We can make some assumptions based on the capsule monster choices. We do remember Eve picked up a flame fruit earlier, which doesn't really have anything to do with her particular composition as far as her team, but she has Flash, who doesn't do anything with a flame fruit. But that does count towards the points earnable by runners just having fruits at the end of the run. The individual fruits that can be used to M-form a capsule monster, the M-form can be used in the gamble point, or they could be used in the jelly kill. Because if you defeat a jelly with an M-form capsule monster, that is a point that you earn, regardless of what other players do. They try to knock you out or whatever timing might issue an offer. So players like Eve, who picked Flash, have the ability to collect a dark fruit, which appears fairly late in the run, but has a fairly high drop rate from the enemies that do drop it. That said, only one enemy does drop the dark fruit, and you have to pretty much hope that you have the appropriate weaponry to kill the enemies that give them fairly quickly, or else they can mess you up. They're not too threatening. Other runners that have Sully, if they want to M-form their capsule monster, they have to deal with a much more threatening enemy in late cave if they want a chance to score one, or
there's the Decker Blade.
A Decker Blade for Bamboo Shadow. I bet he's happy for that one.
Did we see anyone else open that? Or did I just miss it?
I feel like chat would have exploded if we saw more Decker Blades laying around.
Yeah, so this might be where Bamboo's strategy of opening a lot of stuff actually pays off.
Going into a party room filled with bees to discover a Decker Blade is something that I don't see a lot of people prioritizing.
Yeah, since I'm not in the tournament, Bamboo must be the only person to go for that. Because I'd be right in there.
Yeah, and because we don't know what other points and what other Decker Blades exist down the line, that could be an exceptionally big deal. Clan asks what makes the Decker Blade so good. If you're a speedrunner who enjoys gambling with RNG and enjoys big numbers or bigger numbers, the Decker Blade does a fantastic job at providing you with both by having an IP ability that consumes an entirely full IP meter from Decker and Decker only in order to deal 50% or more if used from the front row of a target's current HP, as long as they don't resist the neutral element or non-element, whatever you would refer to that as.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be elemental in helping getting the jelly kill at the end of the run. And if you're right, and there's no other Decker Blades in the sea, then Bamboo just has gotten a huge advantage over everyone else in that round. Also, speaking of big numbers, we're seeing a lot of, Fry sword attacks against Assassins. or weak to light. There's Curse Lifter for my spike. Yep, and hitting like for 1,400 damage or something like that. That's something you don't always see either.
It's still puzzling to me still why Assassins have elemental weakness to Holy, but ninjas don't. Assassins are also faster than ninjas by a fairly sizable margin, and they appear earlier in the campaign, they appear earlier in the ancient cave. It's kind of strange. Hey, we take what we can get, and an enemy with a weakness is an enemy with a weakness. The Assassins themselves tend not to be super threatening. The ninjas, of course, are sure to be much more threatening enemy types. And with our leading runners approaching the 40s very quickly, we might be seeing some ninjas, which we're just hoping for big damage numbers from all of our competitors if they have to fight them at all. And big damage numbers in surprise attacks if possible too. Those Fry Swords and Sizzle Swords are going to absolutely help with that, especially because they have AoE-based IP attacks that deal a ton of damage and target all foes. So, depending on if we have to fight ninjas and how we're able to get jumps on them, we might be seeing Maxim or Decker burn through an IP attack from their Fry Sword or Sizzle Sword in order to plow through. The advantage that runners who have Guy have is they have a runner with, or sorry, they have a character with a significant amount of additional bulk, which just spells out more safety for the potential ninja encounter. Because if you're unfamiliar, ninjas have an AoE attack called Knife Thrower. They can use that and deal a ton of damage to your entire party. It can be used once per ninja, and ninjas can they tend to come in threes, so getting hit by 2 knife throwers can leave your party really struggling. Maxim himself is not a very tanky character, so for Eve's composition, Maxim and Decker will be her front row party members, while Artie and Tia are in her back, and they're not as bulky as far as party characters anyway. So everyone else has more safety in having Guy on their team versus Tia, who one is worth a bit more in terms of points, and 2, if she's able to score an additional deadly weapon, a fatal pick or a deadly rod, she can get a bit more mileage out of that. So it's going to be interesting to see. Eve is sacrificing bulk for speed, which is a little bit of a risky play, as she gets a green core. Which is
and for exciting. 5 points for the unique party.
Yep.
Yep. Whereas everyone who took Guy, of course, can equip the Fry Sword now in addition to the Deca Blade. Whereas otherwise you have to choose. But yeah, there is definitely a lot of considerations, a lot of different and good options as well. I'm definitely surprised that Chad has said that before as well, that we don't see more variety in terms of party composition. But then again, the Jelly Kill is so huge in points. If you want to get your chances, you know, to the limit to actually get a Jelly Kill, you might want to use what we call the optimal 80% party, which is Maxim, Decker, Artie, and Guy.
The Capsule Monster doesn't matter quite as much for the Jelly Kill, but it does matter for the points if you want to get the M form. Also, in terms of just speed, if you pick a Capsule Monster like Fumi or Gusto or Flash, you run the chance of being able to get a Capsule Monster fed up to M form based on what you find. However, you don't necessarily have a Capsule Monster that's able to sponge a lot of hits during the dive down. In late cave, that can make a real difference because certain enemies have very nasty AoE attacks that have damage mitigated by the amount of targets that they hit, specifically Archfiends and their AoE Thunder. If you have 5 targets alive, especially a high-level Sully that can absorb 2 hits or 3 hits from Thunder before dying, that's just additional health that your party is not taking, or not losing from the hits. So we just gotta hope that our particular party members who picked not Sully are able to keep their Capsule Monsters alive to get some value out of them. Darby in particular, who Mike has, is fairly easy to get up to form M, because you can collect a white fruit from, a holy fruit from white dragons, which isn't that difficult to get as long as you're prepared for it, and the Sizzle Sword makes it so you can be very prepared for it. His animations in Forms 3 and 4 and M, and even Form 1, do take time, which is something that Sully doesn't really worry about consuming. And he's not nearly as spongy, so he doesn't take as many hits from enemies in terms of being able to just mitigate damage. So Darby is useful, but not useful necessarily in the sense of a speed run. However, his damage could make sure that Jelly Kill occurs a little ahead of schedule. So there's a lot of reasons to pick just many of either Sully or Darby or Flash or even Seppi.
So we're seeing a couple of interesting floors here. I can't point out all of them, but Eve right now spawned right next to Ninja, I believe. If I saw it correctly, I think this is a new spawner floor. She immediately bailed to the left of a chest, and we're probably going to be seeing some optimal movement threads here in a second. In other news, there has been a Silver Sword in the seat, so runners already know that they have that. And I noticed that people are very much so, for the 3 runners who have already been there, being Mike, Colliers, and Eve, all of those runners seem to have focused on getting a Cancer Rock, which might be related to the early Fry Sword they found.
Well, there's the point objective to obtain a Cancer Rock, so the players are going to be incentivized to get one, not only for the Jelly Kill, but just having a Cancer Rock matters, again, for having characters equipped to the brim with equipment, and also just, again, there's points for having a Cancer Rock, having a Hydora Rock.
Right, yeah.
Eve is demonstrating excellent movement here by pinning ninjas behind these bushes and chests, and then setting up situations where she has a relatively safe opportunity to score a 50-50 on them. One, it guarantees that they don't get the surprise on her, and 2, it gives her a chance to get up on them. Of course, she doesn't get it every time, but what she's doing is very intelligent.
Yeah, she's doing the optimal setup. For Colliers in the low right, we just saw a second Deca Blade, which was not in a treasure room. So, yeah, so much for my theory earlier that Amu got himself a huge advantage by actually going in a treasure room. Yep, so there are multiple Deca Blades in the seed.
Did Eve get that Deca Blade?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Eve is already on the floor, but I think she's ahead of Colliers. Yeah, she is ahead of Colliers, so I'm not sure. Not sure if she did. Eve did not, or scorekeepers say, so yep.
I'll trust our scorekeepers here.
Yeah. We have to.
Yep. Keeping track of multiple
Their job
runners
is to see things, ours is just to talk.
Yep, ours is to talk about what we do see, their job is to just see. Maybe talk amongst themselves. Floors 44 through 46 have the ninja enemy, and as we've seen, they can be pretty threatening. They're very quick to jump on you. They can move 2 tiles to your 1. There's been recently some, I don't know if we'd call it tech or more just observation that we've sort of discovered in terms of how ninjas move and how players can move around to try to get around a room a little bit more safely or get into safer encounters with them. Pretty much that's the best you can do, is hope for a not so dangerous encounter with ninjas versus a encounter that can really just screw you up and mess with your health. Depending on how you're able to approach ninjas or how you're able to force them to approach, you can really make the difference between a good runner and a great runner, or just a chance to survive versus a chance to die. So Calieris is stuck here in a situation where it looks like maybe he's thinking, hey, what do I do in terms of trying to get around this ninja or these ninjas, which is never a combination of enemies that you want to deal with, more than one ninja. He's got good healing, he's got good spells for it, but it's still a risky encounter nonetheless.
If you're not sure how to approach him, you can see that, like, back before when Eve was approaching that, I was sure that she handled it, because, again, we nerded about Ninja in particular, these guys have so many weaknesses, it's not even funny, they're almost a meme at this point. But of course, if you do get in that combat, and if you're, say, a completely casual player, they will probably obliterate you, because if you don't get that 50-50, if you don't get a good setup, probably if you get surprise attacked, there is very little chance you're surviving that encounter at the levels that, runners are encountering them here. But, yeah, with a little bit of practice and the movement knowledge, if you don't skip your ninja lessons, then you have very, very good chances of actually getting yourself in a favorable encounter. And then they're not all that threatening, except for they're gonna steal a little bit of time out of your run. but you will very likely survive them.
Was that a Misto Jewel?
Although, Colliers just got a Misto Jewel drop. Yeah, what's that, a 1% drop?
I think that's a 1% drop, so that's a pretty powerful find. So the handful of rocks provide agility, and none are more so coveted than the Twist Jewel, which are dropped by the Bryn's Lizard that Eve was just fighting the blue lizards on her screen. Misto Jewels can be dropped by 2 enemies, the Assassins and the Ninjas, an incredibly low rate, and they provide a little bit less agility, but they do provide a little bit of attack, and also an IP ability that has a chance to instantly kill a target with, what is it, 60% chance success? That's something.
It's even 90 for Ninja? I don't know, it's so rare.
It's rare.
It's actually 60%. That's stand corrected.
Aha, got it right. Decker can use that, because Decker doesn't have access to deadly weapons. It gives him an option to have a deadly attack that he can attempt to throw out for a little bit of additional security. It helps all over the place. It's a wonderful find, and you can bet that Calliers was jumping up and down from his seat, metaphorically, to celebrate his discovery. Eve is still apparently, or presumably, hunting Bryn's Lizards for Twist Jewels, because they're just such an important discovery that agility really matters, especially because she has 2 Deadly Rod users on her team. The Twist Jewel will allow Tia to pretty much keep up with Artie, and will allow Artie to be even faster, and some benchmarks that really need to be hit later for safety are made much, much easier by having Twist Jewel.
There's yet another movement test that we're going to be seeing for everyone, which is those Iron Golems standing right next to the door. The thing with them is they move on every second step. So what you have to do is you actually have to know whether they will move on the first or second step that you enter the door in. Which, of course, you want to go there in a step that they do not move in order to not get 50-50, aka not give the opponent the chance to get a free turn. And yeah, Colliers did make it by some, he input the secret movement combination made through there. Let's see how our other runners will handle it. I did not see Eve do that, but
I think Eve is right behind him. Calliers.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Eve managed to get a little bit
Same
of a lead
situation.
on Calliers, and then yeah, look at her doing that professional move, so she does not get sideswiped by an Iron Golem.
Exactly. There is the one step coming from a top door that I believe you need. If I'm not confusing things right now, there is always a chance that I get it wrong in a moment, but I believe that if you're coming from a bottom door, you can just move up. If you're coming from a top door, you have to waste one step.
We have Mike dealing with ninjas. Considering that Eve and Calliers are just barely past ninjas, and Mike is on ninjas, again, Mr. 8-minute deficit has done a wonderful job of catching himself back up to the
Mr.
team.
8-minute deficit. Yeah.
And Bamboo Shadow, so to absolutely give everybody credit and praise here, all of our runners here are definitely qualified and competent in terms of being able to run this cave run effectively. Bamboo Shadow being a little behind the other runners does not say anything less of his skill. He is absolutely performing well. He's playing things much more safely as he gets surprise attacked by crabs. But he is we saw him early on taking much more time to explore, much more time to look around and open up chests. He got that early Decker Blade that nobody else had, and for all he knows, that was the only opportunity for him to get a good lead on people, was to find a Decker Blade that, to our knowledge, Eve still has not discovered. And I don't remember seeing Mike collect a Decker Blade either, which put Bamboo Shadow in it's a subtle lead, because the other two that don't have a Decker Blade are going to have to work that much harder at earning points later on.
Yep. And of course, as I said earlier, you have those 2 hours to your disposal. There is a time incentive if you do get a jelly kill. You get it 3 minutes before the 2 hours, for every 3 minutes until, up to 10 times. So, well, let me explain that all the way over again, because that's not a good start to explain that. If you do get the jelly kill 30 minutes early, you do get an additional 30 points. Is that correct? No, wait. 1 point for each 3 minutes. There you go. You get an additional 10 points if you do finish 30 minutes early with a jelly kill. There you go. That's a good explanation. Then for every 3 minutes you take longer, you do not get those that 1 point.
So to clarify,
a very little incentive.
A 90-minute run, or an hour and a half long run, is the objective that I would say all of our racers are going for here. Because again, the only reason to go faster would be to take advantage of the gambit system. Nothing else, or maybe break a tie if you're concerned about someone else getting a jelly kill and scoring very high other than you, which could matter. You know, we could have 4 jelly kills this run, and with point incentives being what they are, if people's combination of objective and points earned total out to equal out the same thing, then yeah, the tiebreaker will matter. So a 1 hour 20-minute kill versus a 1 hour 31-minute kill, you know, that could be the difference that's necessary there to optimize what your points are.
Yep, definitely. And I mean, I think the Decablade dropping this early, and I mean early in quotes, you know, but still everyone got it way before half of the run. Yeah, people might be incentivized to actually pick up the pace, because once you do have a Decablade, it doesn't take all that much to make that kill happen in respect to, you know, not having the Decablade.
Especially with the many things our runners already have, too. Our runners have, Silver Sword. They got Cancer Rocks pretty much across the board. I think either everyone or almost everyone has a Cancer Rock now. And the combination of that with a Fry Sword for Guy or the Sizzle Sword for Maxim absolutely is powerful. Super Swords, I've seen a few of them going around, which are great options for Tia as well. Thunder, I think I saw Thunder on everybody's spell screen. Strong Valor. Our players have a lot, so for all those players that have collected a Decker Blade on top of everything else, they're plowing towards a kill. And to let people know who aren't super familiar with just how progression goes in the cave, a lot of speedruns tend to end with your characters at around level 28 to 32, maybe 34. Many of our players that were just dealing with ninjas had their characters in the level range of 24 to 26.
Yep, so of course, for everyone who was interested in the rules so far, someone just chat notified us of those rules not actually being viewable. So,
hold on a moment.
If you give us a second, then that will be fixed. I think Krieg is already on it, so don't worry about it.
That one is on me, and I just fixed that. So if you were trying to attempt to look at the rules via the exclamation point rules command in chat and you weren't able to, you should be able to now. I see people jumping in very quickly.
Can confirm.
Excellent.
Right. So yeah, maybe just to give a general overview after an hour, and people probably not have been here from the start, you know. Yeah, there is basically collection goals, so people want Kent Rocks, Hidorocks, Gorgon Rocks, and so on, a couple of capsule stuff. Then there is a gambit system. They can bet on certain incentives, like being the first on being a certain floor, or being the first to be in a certain capsule form. And then there are jelly goal incentives, which you do get if you get the jelly kill. Just as a very short roundup of all.
So we now have all 4 of our runners in the floor 40 plus range. The music that you're hearing on Bamboo's screen, if you're not super familiar with the Ancient Cave, is the music that you'll be hearing for pretty much a majority of the rest of the run outside of the battle music, and ideally the songs that you hear on the final floor. There are no more floor layout changes or palette changes, there's no more music changes, but there are still, of course, enemy changes every so many floors. So we'll be seeing our runners playing things very carefully to either get around enemies that are beginning to become exceptionally threatening now that we're in just a later portion of mid-cave, or the drops that are just very paramount to our runners looking for. In the 50s in particular, the coveted Hydora Rock is going to become a very important item to discover. The Hydora Rock is a point incentive to have, and is also a very powerful option for any character to utilize at Jelly. With the exception of Decker, because he wants to use Decker Blade itself, everyone else can do something pretty good with the Hydora Rock. Hydoras themselves
We're
are...
seeing Sirens getting a turn. Interesting.
Sirens are...
Oh, no.
Sirens are a scary enemy. RC doesn't know anything about that, though.
No. I'm not scared. Mainly because I'm not running, but...
So
yeah,
Eve
so
can be a
everyone
little
seems
more
to gather-
brazen when it comes to dealing with Hydoras because she has a snow sword on Tia. You see Tia in her front row, and that's not something players typically do. The Sizzle Sword is great for dealing with the plants that are in these Hydora battles, which you see on Eve's screen, while the Snow Sword is great for dealing with the Hydoras because they're susceptible to ice damage. And in her case, she's hitting for 490. That's well over 3/4 of their HP. With all the added levels that a marathon run provides runners to have in terms of safety HP, safety bulk, and whatever other stats, Tia being in the front row can sponge a hit from them when she normally wouldn't be able to, and that's a pretty big deal.
Yep, definitely. I mean, as you said, Tia in the front row, that is definitely a sight to behold. That does help, and it does showcase how there's not like one way to play the cave, but depending on your set of equipment, which is the cause here, your party composition, and so on and so forth, there are different ways in which you can approach a situation. And yeah, the more you know about the game, the better you can make decisions about certain situations. That one might be a bit more of an obvious one, but of course it's a rabbit hole.
Speaking of decisions our players can opt to do, Mike has taken the lead in terms of depth in the cave. Mr. Deficit himself has just discovered no cores.
You're making it worse every time you talk about him.
The no cores
What
appear
has he
from
ever
floor
done?
58 to 60, and because the other runners, Eve, have just hit the no core floors with this encounter right here that Mike just cleared out himself, they are seconds apart from each other, and Kalieris is just barely behind them. In that Hydora room that Eve was just fighting her Hydora in, that I was describing her snow sword situation in. Our runners being this tightly packed, as I've said many a time, are nothing short of incredible, and the talent needs to be recognized and appreciated for all the hard work and practice that has gone into our runners learning how to be able to run this quickly in the ancient cave.
And Bamboo is, in the mid-40s now, also catching up with the pack. I was about to say that they're all gathering at floor 50, but now, by the time I get to say it, as he said, Mike's already well on his way to the 60s.
Interesting discovery by Eve. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
See that lizard blow?
Right? I saw that out of the corner of my eye. Yeah. That's definitely a good weapon to have. I mean, it looks like players are definitely being supplied with the good equipment here to get that Jelly Kill actually happening. And with all the equipment got so far, I don't know, I think I would be incentivized to maybe pick up the pace a little bit, get that Jelly Kill in.
For those that have a Decker
I was
Blade, they're going to be incentivized to really pick up the pace. I believe, again, Eve and Mike do not have one, so...
Alright, that's a good point. Eve still does not have the Decker Blade. Yeah. So that's another thing that you asked about before, about the thing with the Durando, right? There is a certain chance that every 16 floors a certain drop will reappear. So we might see a lot of Decker Blades in the seat, actually, aka every 16 floors. Which might be what's happening, or it's due to randomness, we'll see.
So you may have noticed, chat, that there have been several snow swords, several boom turbines. That is
that's
a factor.
That's a telltale sign of a D-Rando, definitely, yeah. Yep, so people tend to notice blue chest items the most, but obviously it's true for every single item in there. So yeah, I hope we're gonna see a seed where that's true for miracles, so we just see a ton of miracles. But it wouldn't be all that much. There's actually another point that I want to address that's been mentioned in chat, is that these runners are making the cave look very easy, and yeah, that's definitely true. If you know this cave from being a casual runner, or maybe even, someone who knows the game well and every once in a while likes to pick it up, you will notice that cave takes a few hours to clear, you know, like 3, 4, something along those lines, maybe even longer. Don't be, you know, don't feel bad if it takes even longer. But actually, for speedrunning, if you know all the strats or most of the strats, if you know what to go for, if you know which setups to strive for, then yeah, 2 hours is a very safe marathon time, and it definitely should not go unsaid. All foreigners here, actually, you know, and everyone who's in this tournament really knows how to play this game. Some bear, some worse, you know, but that's to be expected. And it also comes down to luck. But yeah, everyone here can play a game that's otherwise very difficult. Yeah, at a very cool showcase level, at the very least. Maybe even there.
Yeah, it's kind of an unwritten. I don't want to say it's a rule. It's an unwritten guideline. Maybe is if you have a sub 2 hour completion, which is sub 2 hours top 100 as far as the Ancient Cave speedrunning community is currently concerned. If you have a sub 2 hour, you are absolutely qualified to run in a marathon, because that proves that you either know how to deal well with the luck that you've been given, or you know how to deal with the enemies enough to just not run into things face first and die. Well, at least some consistency. And being as all of our marathons are 2 hour runs, then you really don't have to worry too much about working super hard to become qualified and competent at this particular run. Interesting discovery from Bamboo Shadow. He finally discovered Absorb, something that everybody else discovered on floor, was it 12 or so? It's pretty interesting to see, backing up what Real Critical said, that spells are also something that you may see repeats of, although that's kind of built-in logic anyway. If you don't see a particular spell, it does remain in the pool of available discoverable chests until you discover it, and it's added to your character's spell pool. Which is why you may see runners who don't run Artie discover Zap or Fry, and then in another floor or two they may discover Zap or Fry again, which always gives me a laugh.
Nope. You're not going to be happy to see. There's the Liz blow for Mike. So, assuming he's still ahead, I guess that means there's multiple Lizard blows in the seed as well.
He's in the no-core floors. Eve was the one who got it before. Yeah, Mike, Eve, and Calieres have been sort of flip-flopping lead between each other. I think it's now pretty much Eve and Mike who have maybe a 2-floor lead over Calieres. The high doors and the no-cores that the three of our runners were dealing with are all within the 58 through 60 range, so you can definitely tell kind of who's where based on the enemy loadouts that we're seeing. Good Perish Punch.
You can always rely on Sully to Perish Punch your enemies.
So the black dragons that Eve is facing now drop the Dark Fruit. Dark Fruit is the premier item that Flash will need in order to be able to be fed up to its M form. Flash M doesn't really deal damage, but Flash M does... Flash M does a lot of damage, but doesn't really do a lot in terms of healing. So it's a great asset for the jelly. In terms of M form, it's quicker to get to than others, because you don't actually have to feed it to form 4. Unless you want the points to say that you did in events like this. And it's a feature shared only by Darby, who is another one who requires a particular elemental fruit that can be picked up around this point in the cave. Darby's damage being way higher consistently, and value being a little bit higher, I'd say at the very least, for the general spelunking of the cave. But much longer in terms of animation.
For Darby, and you can actually see Darby 4 on Mike's screen. I didn't even realize that he fed to 4 before. But yeah, he already has Darby 4, which is going to be very great to have at the stage. I'm assuming he was hanging around the 58 to 60 range for a while. I'm assuming that's when the feeding happened. I just blanked it out, out of my perception.
Oh no.
But yeah.
Speaking of blank out, we have our first wipe of the day.
Ooh.
And who takes a big hit from high doors by getting surprise attacked by them, and Idoras are not an enemy that you want to trifle with.
Yep, that is quite unlucky. Or unfortunate, I should say, probably. With 55 minutes left, there is very little chance actually still make it there in time. I mean, you do know the floors by now, technically. And I am reading in Discord chat that Bamboo is forfeiting. So, yep. GG to you either way. And it does happen, so... Yep, that makes it 3 runners that are contending here. I mean, Bamboo still has 25 points. The forfeit technically doesn't validate those, but yeah, 3 runners. I know we have a, I believe, unspecified wildcard rule for now, but 3 of these runners will be competing for the final spot, and I'm assuming at least 1 runner will make it to the finals.
It's pretty wild to see that all 3 of these remaining runners are effectively within just a couple of levels and a handful of floors from each other. So this is really serving up to be a... As long as our runners continue to perform the way that they've been, it's going to be a pretty tight finish as things go. I could not tell you who I think is going to win at this point. Because, again, Calieris is now the only person alive in the race with the Decker Blade.
Yep.
And if we don't see others from the other 2, then Calieris being slightly behind in terms of depth is carrying a much higher lead in terms of jelly kill likelihood. And a Decker Blade, you just can't make up the benefit of a Decker Blade through other means with ease. You can have a great team that has Jades Blades, that has Lizard Blows, that has all the other wonderful options, but not having a Decker Blade is just a significant chunk of damage that you're just missing out on. So Calieris' lead, like I said, it cannot be understated how big of a deal that find is.
Yeah, I think it's always important to see this from the perspective of the runners. You know, we have the nice God's eye view and everything here happening. We can say that, okay, one runner is slower than the other, you know. But for each runner, they're sitting in this cave all by themselves. They have no idea how everyone else is doing. I mean, at least hopefully, you know. And yeah, they're gonna be looking at things and making decisions based on what they see. And if you do not yet have a Deca Blade, then it's a very fair assumption to think that no one else has a Deca Blade either. So yeah, that's definitely Calieris sitting in a prime spot.
Saying prime spot, but he's doing a few risky things. He's chopping bushes in the hallway that prevent that dragon from approaching him. It looks like he might be attempting to try to sneak past the dragon to get to the door and just avoid having to take the time to defeat this dragon. He's battling the dragon a couple of tiles below the door.
What he's doing.
It's a little bit of a risk because if he had the means to defeat it quickly, he could have earned a fruit. He could have picked up a little extra experience. He could have gotten a power potion from the red dragon, which is a little bit of a damage up. So there's a variety of reasons to battle the dragon. But again, he's more interested in the speed, which is a big deal.
Eve fighting white dragons now, which makes me think she's going for the fruit points definitely here.
If you haven't already given Bamboo a farewell and a congratulations, he did an exceptional job today and absolutely deserves praise, just like all of the other runners who are here today. So be sure to give him a salute and bid farewell as he returns to his day.
So that's definitely GG. And interestingly enough, you mentioned the slashing of bushes. Mike just did the very same thing as the first duty in that hallway, slash the bushes.
So Eve has the most incentive to deal with that black dragon because she's the one who actually wants the dark fruit drop.
Oh, and there was a surprise deck for Mike. That's unlucky. Actually unlucky. 25% chance for that to happen.
But he lucks out by not having them use their AoE attacks on him.
Yep, nice. It probably was an educated gamble, you know. So
he's got a lot of wonderful items in terms of being able to survive what they dish out. He's got a ton of levels. All of our runners right now are very well leveled for this run. As described earlier, a lot of runners will have the run completed in the early to low 30s, if level 30. We've seen speedrunners go as low as, what, 25, 26 with their jelly kills, and I think Calier is our lowest level runner at level 30 right now. And we're only 2/3 through the cave, so there are definitely time and opportunity for our runners to gain more experience and more levels and more safety cushions with HP and other defensive and advantageous stats.
Yeah, and you're saying 2/3 through the cave. The timer's also past the halfway mark already, so I would say no runner here is really trying to, you know, beat everyone else to the punch, trying to get jelly kill first. So everyone's taking more of a, yeah, I would say slow and steady approach. Not necessarily slow, but definitely steady approach. And I'm curious whether this will affect runners in the next round, that's all I'm saying. Maybe not. Maybe me saying that now will affect runners in the next round. But yeah, this is definitely... This may or may not affect decisions going forward in this tournament.
If you think about the depth of the cave, the runners are not ideally opening too many chests once they hit floor 60, 70, maybe 80. So the time that you spend early on opening up more chests, dealing with a few safety experience-related battles, farming your high door rocks and whatnot, once you've passed Gorgons on floor 84, there's almost no reason to get into combat unless you just need to farm up your IP or secure a few last-minute safety levels with a deadly rod or a deadly sword or a fatal pick against a couple of dragons or things that are blocking your hallway. In the 30s, 40s, and 50s, there's a fair amount of forced combat from enemies that charge at you and have very, very useful drops. The Twist Jewel, the Cancer Rock, the Hydora Rock. So there's a lot of incentive to deal with combat in the middle of the cave. Definitely not at the end of the cave. So where our runners may appear to be going at a fairly capable, roughly 1 minute or so per floor, there will very, very soon be opportunities and chances for our runners to just fly through the floors, and we may see runners in the 90s go all of a sudden from floor 90 to floor 96 in a matter of 1 or 2 or 3 minutes if they're fortunate enough to not have to deal with combat.
Exactly, so if they want to, they can definitely pick up the pace, as we saw for Bamboo, for example, who was really close to the other runners, in comparison to being almost at 50% progress in comparison to Colaris at some point, I believe he was really saying, okay, now I gotta put down the pedal, catch up with the others. Obviously, Mike, Mr. 8-minute deficit, as he called it, starting late into this race because he had the wrong, and actually, lost 8 minutes out of his runtime. But yeah, came back from it, now is pretty much on par with everyone else. I dare not, it doesn't really matter who is a floor ahead of anyone else at this point, but they're all very close together, I believe, still. And yep,
I'm hearing that Eve collected the holy
fruit. Push for very fast times. Yep, White Dragon's usually an enemy that you aren't looking to mess with, unless you absolutely have to. But yeah, this time it's points, and it's gonna be 1 bar for the capsule for defeating.
We're seeing some clever play here from floors 67 through 71. Feature the leech enemies, those blue teleporters on the screen that a couple of our runners have bumped into. They are very threatening. They can teleport on top of you from off screen, or they can teleport in front of you in the direction that they're running. You can sort of manipulate their movement by remaining fairly close to them. If you are within 4 tiles of them in kind of a square, then you can make it so they don't teleport, and instead they wander around kind of randomly. And by wandering, they're not teleporting, so they're not ending up on top of you. So you'll see our runners being very careful, such as Eve in this room where she's delicately hunting for dragons, ideally a specific type of dragon. You see Mike doing the same thing, where he's trying to approach that chest and very, very carefully make it so the leeches don't teleport on top of him as he approaches those stairs. It's great movement that requires being slow and patient with what it is that you're doing, because if you're just running through a room, you could do what Mike just did there, where he got back attacked by a leech facing downward, and Even at a high level, like in the mid-30s, like he is right now, he is not safe from the amount of damage that they can do. They can really mess with him by they're attacking multiple times, multiple spells. They can bring friends. You can see how close he got to just game overing right here, and that would have been awful. And this was all because of just a misstep on a leech floor. So it really cannot be understated that when you're in the 67 through 71 range, the one teleporting enemy that can really get the jump on you is the leech, and they are not to be trifled with.
Yeah, there is definitely, I mean, I mentioned before how movement, general knowledge of the game and so on allows speedrunners to clear this game as fast as we can, you know. But of course that means once you actually stray from that path and actually, you know, do a little bit of movement inaccuracy, execution and stuff like that, you know, maybe forego or underestimate an enemy, which I'm sure Mike did not do here. Yeah, you can very quickly get into a situation where you find yourself in trouble, way more trouble than you were asking for to begin with, and yeah, you'll still be, as you said, Eli, at very low levels in comparison to what the game expects you to be at here. So leeches, archfiends later, you know, all types of metallic dragons, they can be dangerous if you mess with them and are not careful with them. Yeah. They can screw up your run. The Hidoras, as we saw, of course. The thing is, at some point, if they are pressed for speed, they might want to take educated gambles. That's also perfectly fine. And there are ways to mitigate the dangers, but yeah. Sometimes it goes wrong, and I believe that's what happened to Mike just now.
Well, he doesn't have to worry too much about enemies jumping at him from off-screen. Even though there are more teleporters in the cave, they are not going to come at him from off-screen. The only remaining teleporters after floor 71 are the green-robed Dark Summoners, which we've actually seen their sprite before in the 40s range as Necromancers. They only teleport when you're close to them. So once you see them on the screen, you will absolutely know that they're there, and unless you manage to see them piled on top of each other and not know how many there are, you're pretty reliably going to know at least what it is that you're dealing with. That said, they don't start appearing until the late 80s, and right now we have the 70s to go through, and the 70s feature a pretty important enemy. The Gorgon, which is their Minotaur enemy that we saw wandering around on Mike and Calieris' screen. They dropped the Gorgon Rock, which is different from the Gorgon Rock. The Gorgon Rock is a pretty good stat-related accessory, but it doesn't have a very good IP, and some people will think that they've opened up a blue chest and discovered a Gorgon Rock, yay, but it's a Gorgon Rock. It drops from Orkies, which are the final of the 4 enemies that load in using the green Hydora sprite that you've become oh so familiar with over the past 30 or so minutes. The Orkies themselves are absolutely horrifying enemies. They have the highest HP of any enemy in the cave. They hit 8 times if they decide to use melee attacks, randomly targeting. They can come in pairs, and they're pretty fast in that you can maybe get your Maxim to outspeed, but Guy and Decker will not outspeed, and it's pretty rare that your team can sponge 16 hits, especially if you're back attacked and have to deal with that as a guaranteed encounter. So you definitely want to be careful with all of the enemies from the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, but especially the Hydoras that you see in the 70s are not the Hydoras that you think they are. They have a relatively useless drop, not the Hydora Rock that everybody wants, and they are incredibly deadly. The other enemies
to end this whole conversation on a positive note is that once runners get to floor 88, at least in theory, they should be able to get past all the enemies, because from that point on, the movement pairs are completely solved, do not include, you know, too much RNG. You can definitely handle those enemies, and yeah, that's usually floor 88. It's usually the point where a runner will think, okay, I made it. Before that, you have archfiends and all, which are very hard to handle. So yeah, as long as you do know your movement, which I will expect everyone for these enemies does here in this round easily enough, then that should be a point where runners can at least breathe a little bit. You were gonna say something, Eli.
Oh, I was going to say the other enemies you described from floor 88 onward being the only real enemies that are kind of on the home stretch of Victory Road, the dragons and the dark summoners. The 70s and mid to late 80s include the archfiends, the genies, which are the blue spinning cyclopses, and a variety of other enemies. The genies are notorious for being door blockers because they don't have a random movement pattern that can teleport away or just meander away from a door. But the genies, when they decide that they're going to stick somewhere, they just kind of stick there unless you can very carefully lure them away from, you know, whatever other location you're trying to get away from them from. Like Calieris is attempting to do, where he's trying to lure a genie around such that he doesn't have to battle all of the genies in order to get to those stairs at the bottom of that one room. But doesn't always go as well as you hope, because sometimes you're stuck not being super comfortable or being able to easily aggro them and get them to chase after you the way that you get horses to chase you, like they would do in the early cave. So we're seeing very careful play from Calieris trying to get around the genies that are on top of those stairs. He lures them off of the stairs and he attempts to go back north, but you'll see what he's dealing with on his way back up. A Hades chariot that brought along an archfiend. And if there's one thing cave runners know, is that if it's not a ninja that's going to get you, it's an archfiend. They can come in pairs, they can attack, well, they always do things twice per turn. They can cast a nasty thunder, which I mentioned way earlier in the run. They can cast destroy to just instantly kill your characters. They can heal themselves, and they have another slightly weaker AoE, or they can just punch. And ideally, they are arch friends instead of arch fiends, and they heal themselves instead of hurting you. But we'll just have to see what our runners are able to consistently get. And the genies that come in four different flavors are they're less threatening, but they're no less dangerous. Just they're less consistently dangerous. The genies have nasty AoE attacks that they use about 24% of the time, like you're seeing on Calieris' screen. And you can see, even with all of Calieris' levels, everybody except Decker is cleanly two-shot, and they come in groups of 3 sometimes, and misplay on genies can very easily spell defeat. So our runners have to be exceptionally careful with avoiding combat, and with the combat that they do take, being very, very, very careful in what they do during that to minimize the potential damage that they may take.
Yeah, and they can be kind of treacherous in terms of as enemies are. Like the Archfiend, as you said, they're pretty much dangerous no matter what they do, except if they cast stronger. With genies, it's a little bit different. They are usually fine, you know, except for about 24% of the time when they do their AoE attack, and that is really the only thing you gotta be worried about. Everything else is fine. So yeah, most of the time, genies are gonna be an easy time until they aren't. So that's true for a couple enemies in this cave. And yeah, definitely something to watch out for, but that's where the educated gamble comes in, you know. Maybe you're thinking, okay, I can take this guy. Yep.
Even one single Archfiend that you see on Calieris' screen right now is capable of dealing such immense damage. A double Thunder is capable, even from a single Archfiend, of just outright game overing a party that's level 30 or below. The Bolt Shield, if you can ever discover one in a blue chest, is an absolute premier item, but they can cast Destroy and just kill your Bolt Shield user, which will be either Decker or Guy. So just when you think you're safe, you're not always as safe as you feel like you are. This is also the point in which, what's the term? Is it a fallacy? Where people think, oh, I'm just gonna do the Ancient Cave and kill every enemy and get all the EXP and I'll be just fine because I've gotten all the level I can possibly get. And you'll find Archfiends, and 2 Archfiends will cast Thunder 3 times and destroy Decker on the very first cast or whatever. Maybe you'll find your Silver Dragons and they'll do 2 or 3 of their AoEs, and suddenly you're left with nothing. You're not sure what just happened. Really, in a run like this, when you get to this point of the cave, unless you know what you're doing, a surprise attack from an enemy like the genies or dragons, or just a poorly timed encounter that comes up from Archfiends, where maybe you didn't heal between battles to full health, or just you forgot to heal from one battle to the next, can instantly spell defeat. You can be level 70 and you really aren't all that safe. So it really goes to say that our runners have to be very careful to not let anything dangerous catch them off guard. And if they do, that they approach these battles very safely, very consistently, and very carefully.
Definitely. So we're looking at 36 minutes left. So you said that runners might be aiming for that 1 hour 30 mark. And yeah, if I'm interpreting what I'm seeing here, I would say they're feeling a lot more comfortable taking their time, which I can also see. It's just 1 point for every 3 minutes. A free point, of course, if you do get a jelly kill. But yep, Colliers might be. Do you have any idea how far everyone is in terms of floors in comparison to each other?
So Calieris, Eve, and Mike were all dealing with this Hades Chariot Dragon Room to try to lure genies around the stairs. Mike has now fallen behind, I want to say by 2 floors compared to everyone else, because he's approaching this very differently from everybody else. Where the other 2 tried to avoid combat with these genies by luring enemies around and then looping back around to go through the Archfiend. Mike threw caution to the wind. Well, not really. He decided to more aggressively approach the genies at the bottom because he clearly did not want to deal with that Hades Chariot that was in the other room, which he knows, all of our runners know that the Hades Chariots can bring Archfiends. I'm sure he didn't want a chance to. So he just said, I'm going to use my Deadly and my Darby, which has the instant kill ability, Devastation, or is it Destruction? I think it's Destruction, to try to just kill these genies as quickly as possible, rather than looping all the way around and doing the dance. So Eve is on floor 79. Oh, Mike's on 82. Yep. I see. Interesting. He was ahead. And
Colliers is at 88. So, yep, there's actually a lot of difference between the runners. More than I thought.
It cannot be understated that Mike and Eve are going to continue opening looking for something major, a Mythblade or ideally a Decker Blade. Yep. And Calieris just doesn't have to do that. He's able to maintain his luxury of a slightly lower level, maybe go for speed with a little bit of safety, and he doesn't... It would take a lot for him to make that sub 90 for the maximum amount of speed points in terms of just making to the jelly, and he doesn't want to throw away his lead that he doesn't know he has, but it's just very important to recognize that Calieris just has the lead right now. It's a very notable lead in terms of floor depth and in terms of just damage for the jelly. So before you know it, in 10 floors, he will be approaching the final floor and attacking the jelly with all of his best abilities and hopefully securing some good RNG to get a kill. So if you haven't already, you may want to start whipping out your calculators because you'll be needing them pretty soon.
In terms of equipment, we have jumbled all these equipments here through, across a way too long time for me to remember. But I do believe he definitely must have the Fry Sword, and he probably picked up a Cancer or Hedora somewhere. So he does have the Decker Blade and at least one good finisher. He's also going to have a good tier 3 spell, but I don't know, that might not quite be enough. Do you know if anything
I think
else?
I saw a handful of Gold Eyes. I'm pretty sure I saw everyone pick up 2 Gold Eyes throughout the run.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep, that's definitely something they can use. And yeah, as you said, it might be down to RNG. It might be a question of which capsule they picked and how helpful that's going to be.
Looks like most of our runners are dealing with setups that are only going to include one fractional damage option. This might be a good time to talk about how to defeat the Jelly too. We've talked a lot about the Decker Blade and how, oh, here's some other options that are great, like the Silver Sword, the Gold Eye, the Fry Sword.
All right, Silver Sword. Yep.
But why are these options good? So the Jelly, the final boss of this cave, gives you 3 turns, well, technically 4 turns, but 3 turns to defeat it. And you have to deal just barely under 10,000 damage to it within that time. So we're looking for runners to have the weaponry or the Gorgon Rock that give you the ability to deal fractional base damage congruent to a target's current HP. The Decker Blade being the premier item for that, but other weapons including the Myth Blade, Old Sword, which deal 1/4 and 1/6 of a foe's current HP respectively. And also an Uncursed Deadly Rod and Uncursed Deadly Sword, which are a bit more restrictive in how they're able to be utilized because you need a Curse Lifter to uncurse them from its holder, but they deal 1/6 and 1/8 damage, respectively, as well. Those combined with finishers like the Silver Sword, Gold Eye, Mist Rapier, and other spells like Thunder, Ice Falk, Dragon, and even Trick to boost up your attack power are the things that are going to matter in terms of making sure our teammates or our runners get the kill. So we'll want to see them use their fractional-based attacks first, like their Decker Blade and everything. And then we'll want to see them on turns 2 and 3 use their Cancer Rock to multi-hit, or their Hydora Rock to multi-hit, or their Silver Sword to hit 1 time for 3 times the regular amount of damage, or cast their spells from the back row, because melee-based damage, anything from a weapon, deals more damage from the front row than from the back. So spellcasters will be in the back row typically, already on turns 2 and 3, and possibly turn 1 depending on what he has. Tia, maybe Maxim depending on what they have too, are going to be in the back row for a good chunk of time, while Decker is presumably going to be in the front row most of the time.
Yep, and as you explained that, Caleres find himself on floor 96, so not losing any time here. And it's actually, if you pay attention on Caleres' stream, he's right now in a room that we've seen before. That's what I said earlier, you know, rooms repeating like every 16 floors or so, perhaps. We have seen this floor, and I believe it's the one that Mike was struggling with the genies, or, well, everyone was struggling with the genies. Hanbuk.
Try to flip it to Caleres' audio. It doesn't appear to be either streaming out very well or streaming out at all. I was barely able to hear it, even with the gain applied, so I just flipped it back to Eve. He's on floor 98, and he is spawned on top of the stairs, so Caleres is about to deal with the jelly battle. So everyone whip out your calculators, hope that we'll score a mighty jelly kill. We might see a little bit more feeding before the jelly kill on Caleres' screen, but it's going to be momentarily a pretty exciting battle nonetheless. And I mean, of course, we hope all of our runners get jelly kills, so we're going to wager on what we'll see. Remember, he is the Decker Blade runner here out of everybody, so he's going to be setting up his Arnie, his Guy, and his Maxim with as much damage as he can stick them with, and then giving Decker the Decker Blade to just be the strongest opener that he can possibly set up.
Yep, and this is where we do see the equipment and the Trident Blade. Great bugs in the US version. Let's see, he also has the Mr. Jewel, but that's not gonna help me much.
The Lizard Blow will help, the Hydora Rock will help.
God, God.
The Rock is definitely gonna be great.
I've got his voice slipping through. Yeah, the Hydora Rock is very important because it boosts attack, and it also allows you to utilize any weapon to hit 3 times within a single attack. It also doesn't use so much IP that you can't use anything else with it, although there's not much else that you can use with it. An example would be the Mini Shield or the Anger Brace, which is a 13% IP consumption to boost attack by 40%. That boost from Battle Lust is very, very big. Maybe Trick boost with the Trick Rings IP could also suffice, and then you could use the Hydora Rock for its what is it, 77% or something for triple attack. But the biggest thing is you can use a blue chest weapon like a Mega Axe, Fry Sword, Sky Sword, something else is just incredibly powerful, and then utilize your other 3x based weapons like the Lizard Blow, maybe with a different rock to boost that 3x's attack power. So the Lizard Blow is not the best weapon, but it's the strongest weapon that has a 3x damage multiplier, and everybody can equip it. So the Lizard Blow is a very important item because just regardless of your party composition, anyone's able to use it, and that's very, very helpful to be able to have that right on your backside. And then the Cancer Rock is kind of like a Hydora Rock, but a little bit less. It instead of doing 1 hit for 3 hits in 1 IP attack, it does 2 hits, but you can use it twice in a combat, which is big because you can have a character in the front row on turn 2 and turn 3 use it, or you pair it with an old sword, which none of our runners discovered. The old sword being a 1/6 HP damage fractional ability, and then the Cancer Rock being a 2-hit combo with the old sword itself, which is a very powerful sword compared to everything else.
Yep, and there's going to be a little bit of capsule feeding here as well to go for a Sully 4, which is the capsule with arguably the highest damage. Well, if he does his attacks, that is. So, yep, it should be a jelly fight. At the same time, we see Eve feeding Flash to presumably Form 5.
She may not be going for it yet, but she does have the Dark Fruit, so she should be able to get to it quickly. But the Form 5 point requirement for Flash and Darby does require that you feed it to Form 4 and then double back down to give it the Elemental Fruit in order to get it up to Form M. So you can't really cheese yourself up to a quick M form by skipping an entire form's worth of feeding. We get, if you're on a cell phone and you have the ability to post a Moai head, feel free to post that because Squidward's house is in the game and Caliaris is going to be doing the best he can with it.
And let's match him. Let's go Decker Blade, Blocks.
The Decker Blade, Hydora Rock with Zerko Axe, Mist Rapier is a 3x, along with a couple of other attack boosters like the Magic Scale and the Boom Turban to bump up Artie's attack by just a little bit. All those little pieces of damage boosts are going to matter, so we definitely want to see what we can out of our runners. Capsule monsters to back everything up. We don't have Trick in terms of an IP attack move that can increase damage from our 3x damage dealers, so we just gotta hope that everything that happens cooperates as best it can. Ideally, we would cast a couple of spells to buff up and prep the team, so that way our Fatal Blow can deal a bit more damage than usual. But without that luxury, we're going to have our runners just do the best they can with what they got. And in this case, he's going to be having our spellcasters tossing Thunder from the back row. So Artie is a dedicated...
Oh, go ahead. No, you got it.
So, we saw our spellcasters. Artie is a pretty good spellcaster, dealing with very respectable 350 damage with Thunder. Fatal Blow is not that great. It only dealt around 4,800, which was about a quarter of its potential in terms of damage. So we're not seeing a huge damage boost out of it, which is a bit unfortunate for Caliaris, but we do have other very powerful damaging options coming out of both Decker and Guy. I'm sorry, Maxim and Guy. That can hopefully catch everything up. Now we're noticing that he's using his big attacks with Guy, with Decker, with Maxim all in the front row. And again, that's because melee-based damage does more from the front row. So there's multi-hitters, those fractionals, and those 3 times multiplier-based damages, damage-based attacks. They do more from the front, which is very important.
And Sully's helping out too, using its head, you know?
Yep.
Using its wits in the best way. So yeah, this... I did not do the count, but it did look very promising.
We've got this kill. It is about to happen. And there we go.
This much. There we go.
So our first day of the event, and our first jelly kill of the event, Caliaris gets it and secures it with, I say with gusto, but with Sully. So fantastic performance, nets him the Ancient Key, and he is done. So at this point now, Caliaris just needs to confirm the amount of fruits in his inventory, any blue chest items that he still has, and miracles that he still has, because those count towards his points as well.
Yep, and the kill happened at 22 minutes and some change. So that will be important for the points. So those will be racking up here momentarily.
Yep, once those points are tabulated in, we'll see the lead that Caliaris earns from the defeat the jelly in 3-minute increments down from 2 hours up to 10 times. Yep. So he gets, 7 full 3-minute points out of that? which is pretty good. That sets Caliers up with a substantial lead that Eve and Mike are going to struggle to come back from because, again, I've said it 100 times, I'll say it again, I have not seen a Decker Blade on either of their screens, so unless I'm missing out, they are still going to be furiously opening chests to try to secure their jelly kill for the run, which means they're going to be looking for stuff that Caliers did not do. So there very well may be Decker Blades floating around, and Caliers just had no reason to go looking for them. Or there may not be, and our runners may be praying.
Deadly Rod. Yeah, so we'll see. You know, the Decker Blade is not the only thing they can find to actually improve their jelly situation, and of course, assuming none of them have the Decker Blade, and the unfortunate thing happens, and neither of them gets a kill, there will still be a second and a third place based on everything else they do. So yeah, Eve just opened a miracle here. That's a single point. You know, it's definitely. Yeah, it's definitely still an interesting race in that regard, regarding the second place, which will determine the wildcard round entry, which means another chance to enter the finals. So the first placed runner will be getting their assured path to the finals, and everyone else will be thrown in the wildcard round. Well, you know, one of them, at least one of them. I don't know.
So there is one additional thing to consider this year in the wildcards. Because we had a little bit lower sign-up turnout than we have had in previous years, we typically have run Fatal Blowout wildcards such that there will be 4 participants in the wildcard round. In this particular event now, we only have 3 sets of preliminary rounds, and with each round having 1 advancing competitor and 1 wildcard, there will be 3 wildcard participants. So we're looking at having the 4th wildcard being representative of the 3rd or 4th place person across all rounds that has the highest amount of points. Kind of battling out cross round. So that's going to be a big deal because Mike, just because, or Eve, just because they may not take 2nd place here, doesn't mean that they're out of advancing in the tournament.
Is definitely an Artie blind situation going on for Eve. Eve moment, yeah. It's yeah, she's not gonna be happy about that one. It does happen. It's fun to imagine what these runners will be saying, you know, especially for those who catch the streams regularly.
It's nail biting because we know both of our runners are trying to do everything they can to get just a little bit more, both IP, both chests. So this last 17 minutes is going to be kind of tense between the 2 of them.
Definitely, and I mean, you know, again, they do not know that the other person is in exactly the same situation, pretty much, you know, for what I can tell. I mean, yeah, the party composition might be a relevant factor here. Guy being able to use the, well, I mean, as it stands, without Decker Blade, Decker is probably going to be using the Fry Sword, but Guy otherwise being able to, and Tia being able to use Snow Sword probably isn't going to make that much of a difference either. We'll see. And they will both have their individual equipment, gears. There's the Deadly Rod for Eve. I don't know how many Curse Lifters everyone has. So yeah. 16 minutes left in any case. I don't think either of them is particularly concerned with a 1 point per 3 minutes that they get the jelly kill. They're just gonna be happy if they do get a kill. Yeah, that's what I said in the beginning. You know, if you do miss some important items such as the Deca Blade, someone else in the round gets them. That's what can happen to you in the D-random. It is a very particular kind of RNG, maybe. You know? Not technically RNG, but then it pretty much effectively comes down to it. Because you cannot open every single chest. You can try, but at a certain point, there's no way you can continue that. Bust the sword sink, yep. Both simultaneously entering floor 96, so yeah, interesting. It would be funny if they got the exact same points at the end. Then the tiebreaker of who reached floor 99 is going to be, I'm assuming that's one of the tiebreakers, is going to decide the race. There is definitely a sync going on here.
I guess both of our runners
And a
also
very
have the
nice
opportunity to get a few extra points from, what is it, self-destructing at the jelly, which they may opt to do if they can't secure a Decker Blade. They want that 50-point jump, and they're going to do what they can to prep up such that either they have as much experience as possible so they can, if they find maybe a less than ideal option, they can still maybe get a kill, or they could just say, forget it, I'll just rush the jelly and commit my self-destruct and get that 5 points, which could matter. That could be the difference. Because it's going to be
getting a very good chance of making it to floor 96, both almost immediately, or almost at the same time entering that floor. Mike's slightly ahead. And again, we see the familiar floor.
It is dangerous when you have gold dragons on your screen that Mike's got to. Oh boy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You've already messed with him a couple of floors before, you know. Mike already has full IP. I'm not sure about Eve. Maybe as well.
Eve does not have Tia IP.
Except for Tia.
This is the point in which people who decide to bring Tia or Salon, especially Tia though, really struggle with what it is that they're trying to do, because you need a fairly high leveled Tia in order to survive the damage incoming from a Cinder Blast from a Copper Dragon, which tend to be the best options for IP at this point in the cave. Missing that Gold Dragon, as RD does, causes a lot of stress.
That being said, 41 is a fairly high level, and this party is not something that Eve chose simply because of the unique party incentive or something like that, but it is something that she is used to running, so she definitely does know all the strats required to IP farm with Tia here. So that is one incentive. In the meantime, Mike does make it to Jelly, and yep, now we see what he's got in store for the setup. Eve gambling here.
Something we're going to see on Mike and consequently Eve's screen is that if our runners had a Hydora Rock or a Cancer Rock, they would be using them in combination with their Fry Sword or Sizzle Sword to get as much as they can get out in terms of damage. But also, uncursing a Deadly Sword or a Deadly Rod with all of those curse lifters that our runners found are giving our runners the only options that they have in terms of fractional base damage. That means that Maxim, Artie, and Tia, if they're using those particular weapons, will be dealing much less in terms of damage because they'll be using weaker fractionals and they'll be tossing spells from the back row. And Guy and Decker, instead of using a Decker Blade or a Myth Blade or something, Decker is going to be trying to deal as much damage as he possibly can with a Cancer Rock or Hydora Rock or whatever else he can get his hands on. And in this case, Eve has a better composition for it as long as she's able to get a couple of fractionals out. Because Eve has a Cancer Rock and also a Gorgon Rock, where Mike does not.
Yep, and she should have Uncursed Deadly Rod, assuming there is enough Curse Lifters, which I still didn't see, but I am seeing it in chat again, so it should be good. At the same time, there is now Mike's Jelly fight.
Huge devastation. Which is the 1/8 damaging fractional out of Arden from the front row.
Recursive is alright. Yep.
We're also hoping for a lot of damage from Darby, and Darby is attempting to do what he can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Darby 4 and Flash 5 are both like really good capsules for the Jelly fight. That definitely has to be said. More reliable than Sully, even though it has worked out for Kaliaris. I'm not sure if it's gonna be enough to make a kill here, though. For either one of them. We'll see.
When a Deadly Rod is your only fractional-based means of damage, it takes an incredible amount of levels to make up for the fact you just don't have that damage available from even a Mythblade or an old sword, and not having Trick to boost the attack power of his team also means that he's struggling to just maintain and score that output. So he's getting a ton of damage out, which is great, and his Darby is cooperating by using specials where he can.
Yep, not the best specials in that turn, but still. We'll see. Yeah, the problem that's...
About 8,400 damage out of Mike. Very respectable.
And now it's Eve's turn to make it here. The problem that Eve has is that a lot of points that she has are actually tied to getting this Jelly kill. So, yeah, she wants to defeat the capsule with an M4 capsule. She wants to defeat the Jelly with an M4 capsule. She wants to defeat the Jelly with a Feel My Party member present, but if she doesn't get the kill, none of those points will actually be counted for her. So, yep. We'll now see Mike's points being verified, so his point counter will rise up, but yep, we won't know until after Eve Jelly fights how much points she has, so don't be confused by that difference in points for the time being.
We see a pair of 1/8 fractional attacks coming out of Tia and Artie on turn 1, and then Flash is cooperating, but his damage is just not comparative to what Darby is able to do, even when he's using his special. It's decent, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing that it's barely a comparison. So Eve is sitting at about 6,000 damage right now, and I do not think that she has a way to deal almost 4,000 damage on this third turn. So she may be going for the damage just to do as much as she can, or she could have just attempted to off her party and take those 5 points where she could, but again, like you said, so many of her points are derived from the Jelly battle itself.
Yeah. Yep. And I will say I definitely appreciate a runner trying to get the kill rather than again the intentional self-destruct.
But Eve does manage to out-damage Mike by about 200 points, 180. Inconsequential in this case, but that is all of our runners.
But it is interesting, you know, in respect to what the capabilities of these loadouts were. And yeah, now there's going to be some points calculations for Eve. And I will definitely say, join in chat and say GG to all our runners. Like my colliers, Eve and Bamboo Shadow here. Been an interesting race. 8 minutes left on the clock here. So, yeah.
Yeah, the fact that all of our runners made it to the Jelly, with the exception of Bamboo, who made it very, very deep, is nothing short of great. The fact that all of our runners were able to demonstrate great movement and show off, you know, just the potential dangers of, you know, recovering from a mistake or getting as far as they did is great. It goes to show the talent of all of our players that even in a seeded run like this, you can still have varied performance. This isn't like a Super Metroid speedrun, and based entirely on your inputs and stuff. The Ancient Cave is a knowledge-based run where your ability to react to what you see and puzzle solve is more important than the dexterous movement that comes along with, you know, frame-perfect inputs consistently and everything. So this is a very different kind of speedrun. It's great to see a showcase of all this. So we get to see Eve score some points in a variety of ways that Mike didn't, by collecting the elemental fruits, the holy fruit, the flame fruit, dark fruit, which, from my understanding, you don't get more points based on the amount of each fruit that you have. You get a point based on simply having a variety of fruits. So Eve should have 3 points there for her fruits, and didn't lose anything by feeding up to Form M Flash, which is good. Plus her miracles, and if she was able to equip a party member to full. Plus she had the unique party composition, which gives her that 5-point lead. Gorgon Rock, Cancer Rock, if she had a Hydora Rock, which I don't remember seeing her get one, but those count as well. And the blue chest grabs that she didn't feed, such as the Gold Eye, Boom Turban, Snow Sword, Fry Sword, all those miracles. All those little bits, there's just 1 point here, 1 point there. And with as tight as Mike and Eve are currently set as far as their points go, something like having her 3 Boom Turbans is a big deal when she is currently 6 points behind. So a Gold Eye, 3 Boom Turbans, a Snow Sword, a Fry Sword, a Sizzle Sword, if she has all of those. Or is it unique? Oh, it's unique discovery. Okay, so it's not multiple Boom Turbans, but still, it's just the discovery of all of these variety of items and these variety of fruits and these variety of rocks. As far as the key rock drops are just going to matter that much more for her. So we know for sure that Calieris did get to advance with his score, and that is absolutely worth praise. So congratulations again to Calieris, while tabulation finishes on Eve and Mike. And if you want to take an opportunity to go get yourself a break, we'll be starting the next run in roughly 15 minutes as we get our tabulations here finished between Eve and Mike, and also get our runners set up for the next round.
Yep, and there is points for fully equipped characters. So while we process the points here, definitely do not leave yet. There is a race afterwards. There is a race 2. We'll finish some of the people that you have seen in chat here. They're currently getting themselves ready. We're going to have a short break, as Eli said.
Also, if you want to participate in the events that we have going on, or if you want to follow them more closely and you don't have access to only the RPG Limit Break schedule, consider joining the Ancient Cave Discord, which has a link that I just posted up. So you can participate in these events, follow your friends, cheer them on, learn how the Ancient Cave works yourself, clear an Ancient Cave run yourself, and brag about what you're able to do. It looks like Eve may have taken the lead because of all of these little itty-bitty things that she was able to put together. Her fruits, finding that ear jewel in the early cave that only a lady can use, and therefore Mike was ineligible to even attempt. To have a fully equipped character is part of the point structure, and we get that with Tia. I do remember seeing a few other rings on other compositions, including, I think, a mind ring somewhere.
Yeah, there were 2 deadly blades in there, one in the treasure room pretty early, and then, well, in the late 20s, or in the late 10s, something like that, and then around floor 30, I believe. But, yep, none afterwards, as far as we know. Will there be a reveal of the gambits, is a question in chat, and I'm actually curious about that as well.
We will share that result after we take a break, because it looks like our tabulators are still confirming a few things. They may be going back to review clips and confirm a couple of pieces of information as well, and that's going to just be dragging our time here. So I'm going to put us into a break. Everyone feel free to take advantage of this opportunity. Go grab a snack, use the restroom, walk your dog, whatever you need to do. And when you come back, we will have news on the confirmation between who advances into the wild cards between Eve and Mike.
See you guys around.